We're going to go to Galatians. That's all right. Go to Galatians. If you looked in your order of worship, you already had an idea. So much for the suspense. Go over to the book of Galatians, please. And if you don't know where that is, it's on page... I don't even know where it is. There it is. Page 410. No. Galatians. Galatians, the history and background of the book of Galatians. Why pick Galatians? Well, I'm not exactly sure why. I guess we're going to go through it and find out why. I do know that it's a scary book. It's a very scary book. I do know that it is also not the longest book that Paul wrote, because Paul's letters are in the longest to the shortest. Romans, we've done Romans. Right? Then there's Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. Then there's Galatians. But you know, they've got a lot shorter than Corinthians, because now we're only 6 chapters. 6. Short book. You can sit down, you can read it 20 minutes. 11. And I'm going to give you some background that you might understand what's going on. I don't know how much historical background you know, how much you need. But if you look on the order of worship, you're going to see there's a map on the front of the order of worship. And it shows you where Galatia is. And I have to tell you, Galatia changed. This is Galatia in the time that Paul wrote this letter. It's a little bit bigger. It shifts throughout the time period of the Roman occupation. It's in Asia Minor, right? Modern-day Turkey. That's where this is. That's where this letter is addressed to. Now, Paul has been there. Paul and Barnabas went on that first missionary journey. Remember where they first went? They went to Cyprus, where Barnabas was from. We never got the book of Cyprus. We don't have that one. Well, I don't know how well things went there. I mean, Paul struck somebody blind. That was kind of cool. But then they went on to Asia Minor. In Asia Minor, a guy named John Mark basically chickened out. That's the way Paul felt about it. He turned around and went back to Jerusalem. And Paul kind of held a grudge about that. That John Mark left him. But Barnabas and Paul went on. They went on into the interior. Now, if you look on your map, there is a city called Tarsus. Right? Guess whose area they're in now? That's where Paul's from. Saul of Tarsus. So it's kind of going back to his home turf. Does he know about the culture there? Yes, he does. So he goes to these towns, and he goes the same thing every time. He first goes to the Jewish synagogue, and he preaches there, and people get excited because sometimes they see miracles. Right? And eventually he gets kicked out of the synagogue, and then he goes to the Gentile people. And that's how they start churches in all those little towns that you see in the front of your order of worship there. Right? Sometimes things go well. Sometimes he picks up people like Timothy. And Timothy travels with him. Picks up a guy named Titus and his entourage for people who are training for ministry. Sometimes great miracles happen. Sometimes Paul gets stoned. And that, for you, means literally rocks thrown at him. That's what that means. Yeah, in our culture it means something different. I mean, I know that because for, 12 years I was a stonemason. And you tell people that, and they hear stoned mason. Which is kind of typical. But you had to, that means I work with stone, okay? Well, when Paul got stoned, that meant they'd throw rocks at him. And some hard times. And some injuries. Paul says, I was with you because of physical injuries. And I can attest, this is in Galatians, I can attest that you would have torn out your eyes and given them to me. Matter of fact, if you look at chapter 6, Paul says, I want you to know I'm personally writing this. See how big the letters are. Paul suffered from that missionary journey. Now we know he had an eye problem before because, well, he had this blindness thing, remember, on the road to Damascus? Right, and those scales fell off. But he had something going on after he was stoned there, and he had problems with his eyes. He started these churches. He and Barnabas. They got run out of town after town. These are his churches. And now he's writing a letter to them because there's a problem going on. The problem is other people followed Paul. Other people who were missionaries in their own mind. They went and they said, yeah, Paul is an okay guy. It's great that he started these churches, but let me clear up some things that Paul just didn't have right. Let me fill you in on some other things that Paul should have told you. Let me tell you about a great opportunity. Now that you're believers in Jesus, you can become Jewish. Isn't that great? Isn't that what you've always wanted? I mean, I being Jewish, I thought that's what everybody wanted, to be Jewish. And that's what God wanted, everybody to be Jewish. And really, it's not that hard. All you got to do is have a little operation. Only the women out there are laughing. Because this had to do with males. Now you got to be tough to read Galatians, okay? Because it talks a lot about the male reproductive organ. Really? It talks about removing part of it. The foreskin. Right? There's a word for that. Circumcision, which means a round cut. Guess what you're cutting around? The male reproductive organ. Now, it usually happens when you're 7 days old. Right? It's a lot of fun then. I remember. Now, hopefully you forget it. Right? That's a little different, though, now that you are an adult. Or now that you are able to say, I'm not sure I want to do this. Right? But these people came behind Paul and they said, this is just the greatest news, and this is what you've got to do now. You need to become Jewish. All it takes is a little bit of foreskin removal, and you will be loved by God. Just a little bit of foreskin. That's all it takes. Would you do it? Well, first off, if you really believe these people, that the only people who are going to be saved are the people who had this little operation. Would you do it? Maybe. Given a sharp enough knife, maybe some anesthesia, yeah, or a lot of alcohol. Yeah. Would you do it? Well, there were people doing it. They were convincing people that you need to become Jewish, have this little operation, and then life is good. You are one of us, and that's what God's always wanted. These were Christians. These were Jewish Christians preaching that. You know where they came from? Jerusalem. You know who's in Jerusalem? The big guys. The big guys. James, the brother of Jesus. How could he be wrong? Peter. Well, we know Peter could be wrong, but surely by now he's got it right. John. We just got through reading and studying the book of John. The big Jerusalem. And these guys come and they say, oh, we're from Jerusalem and this is really all you need to do. And Paul said, don't do it.